Cominciata la partita? Adesso?
Sì, sì.
Perfetto.
The North Code. The North Code.
Program installed to give S.S Lazio fans a voice in English. It started back in 2007. A special welcome to new listeners from Stereo Serie A and ItalianFootballDaily.com. There's a lot to get to as promised at the conclusion of the Mercato has come and gone yesterday, and it's left Lazio in a puzzling position. Today we tackle the fallout from the first team of Rome's transfer market to their strategy, the surprising loss of Il Profeta Hernandez, and later on I'll touch on the situation here in Canada as well with Lazio Club Canada. I'm always Michael the Show DiMaggio, joined by Cathal Caxi Mullen from Ireland. He provided minute-by-minute updates with the Mercato madness on Lazio's precarious moves, resembling a bit of a Gianluca Di Marzio in the future. The moderator of Lazio Land, he basically is and embodies Lazio 24/7 on the regular. He's a regular of this program. Caxi, my friend, how are you?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
I'm great. Who's really great after that Mercato? But we promise not to agree on things. Sometimes we have a tendency to agree on things, but we're going to keep it spicy today because we're going to try to embody every fan's take on what happened yesterday, and we'll also touch on what's going on the forums and what people have written. And we're also joined today by fellow sports journalists from the Southampton-less Osvaldo now. Good for them. Another familiar face is here with us, Scott Ballum from the UK. Scott, what's your hate level for Lotito at today?
Oh, extreme. I think I didn't think it would get any more, but it does seem to be growing day by day.
And I'm glad you're going to spew that across this episode of the North Curve. And let's get right to it. Let's get to the Mercato. And although we don't have a monetary figure on it yet, the club has sold Hernandez Il Profeta for a nice Il Profita with Inter. And we've also rid ourselves of Flocari to Sassuolo. And of course, in shady fashion, no less, Scully has returned to Genoa yet again, unless we forget Vicinius too, on loan with Padova as well. Incoming, we see a cup-tied Helder Postiga arrive on a 6-month loan from Valencia in Spain with an option to buy, and he became infamously known as Chelsea's flop. Now, Gael Kakuta has joined the club as well on loan. Now, something tells me on every Laziali's mind right now is those images of tears of Hernandez at Formello, which kind of caught us all by surprise, which a guy who I didn't expect to be moving even 3 days ago. If you told me Hernandez would have been sold, let alone be pictured with an Inter scarf yesterday, signing that contract. Caxi, we'll start with you. The floor is yours. Get anything you need to get off the Mercato off your chest. You can begin with Hernandez and take it wherever you want to take it.
Yeah, Hernandez. I think in some ways in the last few years, as bad as these Mercati have been for Laziali, I think we've kind of become accustomed to at least keeping our greatest stars. And for some reason, this particular sale is one mighty kick in the teeth. Probably more so than anything because we all saw those pictures and the video footage of Hernandez in the car, and really was a very poignant moment. But I just think that it's just made sort of the bitter taste that we're used to getting in our mouths all that more bitter. I think the price though is probably, well, we don't know the figures, but probably reasonable enough. And I think if ever there was a time to sell the guy, now was the right time to do it. He had 18 months left in his contract. He has the World Cup coming up, but we don't know if he's going to be there. He's sort of in and out of Scolari's plans, and I think now was the time where we just had to cash in if we're ever going to cash in, and it seems to have made it. The fact that it was his decision seems to have made that much easier for Lotito than it would have been. But for me, everything else that's happened in the transfer window was sort of kind of a haze, because it's just been obliterated by that one single transfer. It's the moment where you sort of realize that we're no longer can say that we're among the top 6-7 teams in Serie A. It's just, we've reached a point where you feel that we're just mid-table and nothing better. The real reason for it, I mean, really, I think the reason why we can say that is we have two match winners in Hernandez and Klose. One's 35 and he's starting to not win matches for us, in my opinion. And now the only person we could possibly count on to win games for us when things are close and tight, he's no longer here.
And it leaves you a bit speechless from what I could see, like a bit of a loss for words. And people are calling Lazio a feeder club now, and the hate is spewing across the forum. And of course, shocker, nobody's really here with us today to talk about their feelings. People like to hide behind their keyboards and stay on their stances of how they hate Lotito. And Scott, feel free to jump in at any point to interrupt me. But my stance on Hernandez is this, and it's very simple. And feel free to disagree, Caxi, as well. I appreciate some of the positivity. You say now is the right time to sell Hernandez. I say the right time to sell Hernandez was last summer, and I think we touched on that when he was at the highlight of his career after coming off silverware, and he's starting to get called on to Brazil through the summer with Scolari. And now to go and do that in the middle of our season, you've kind of just taken whatever wins we had left in our sales completely out. There doesn't seem to be any hint of foresight or planning here. We have no replacements, because you can't replace a guy like Hernandez. You said he's a match winner, and there's no indication from the club or a stance that needs to be taken. You say we're off the top six now, and I totally agree with you, because you've taken a special player out of a team that really didn't have a lot of special players to begin with, and no direction, no indication of what is real with the club and where it intends to go. And at least with the first edition of Rea, we saw our targets were always clear. We went on to try to avoid relegation. That was the first target, and that's what Rea did. He saved us. Then we were trying to finish for the qualifying places of the Champions League. 2 years running, we fell just short. And now I'm left scratching my head. Is the season now a wash? Did it ever get started? I'm no means against selling Hernandez. I'm against selling him right now, because we had 2 summer mercatos to do. We had last summer and we had the upcoming summer with, in my opinion, his value would have increased after the World Cup if he did make the team. Of course, you said he was in and out of the team. There was a potential for him to sit the whole World Cup on the bench, even if he had made it. But my personal memories of Hernandez will always be this. He was the last guy to leave from signing autographs after I met him in 2011. He stayed with everyone. He took pictures, smiled, waved, hugged, you name it. Great person to build a franchise around. I just don't see the timing, the planning in place, and I think I could be also reading into it too. There's a conspiracy theory in my head that says, Hernandez's tail was cut short because of the return of Rea, because it's no secret that Hernandez was in full flight support for Petkovic until the last day, and conspiracy theories seem to be everywhere and anywhere in Serie A, and especially on the Lazio land forums, and they're full of it.
I must admit, from my side, Hernandez is such a strange one. I got home, I think it was a Thursday evening, and the last thing, as I logged on, the last thing I expected to see was obviously that video. It was, I personally thought he'd be here till the end of the season, and come the end of the season, if we couldn't twist his arm to sign a new contract, he'd then be sold, I'd say, after the World Cup. But unfortunately, obviously, like with the contract running down, so there would only have been 12 months left. I think the value would have dropped, unfortunately. But then when we start to hear that he did ask to leave. The guy, Eddie Rea tried to obviously change his mind, obviously persuade him to stay. Hernandez said no. He obviously felt for him that it was the right time to move. For ourselves, I think the big difference that this time last year, we were still in that sort of top 2, top 3 battle. The year before was the same, whereas this year, this kind of like after the sort of the cup final, the season just never really seemed to get started. It's just been sort of as if everyone put so much effort and so much sort of focus on that now sort of this season there hasn't been a single moment when we've sort of even contemplated Champions League football next year. Whereas that's always been the pride in the last couple of seasons, that we've always been right up there in the mix, trying to challenge for these things. So I suppose, and then, and to be fair, this window could have even been worse. The fact that, had the club accepted a bid for closer, I think then there would have been extreme, riots and things come the next home game, which obviously would be the derby as well, of course. But it was like, I can't believe that, that when I started to read those links, I was thinking, can the day get any worse? But yeah, so it's I don't know. As a Lazio fan today, I'm sitting here feeling very, very worried, I must admit.
The timing is atrocious. No matter what way you slice it, I don't see how you can feel that now was the time to sell him, Caxi. Especially, I'm not saying even if you had to sell him during this window, you had from January the 1st to January the 31st to put this deal together and then draw up the names for any sort of special player out there that you can replace him with. Somebody that fits at least the attributes list of these kind of people. But instead, there's no head, there's no tail, there's nothing to this team. There's no head, no strong neck to direct us where we're going. We already have our doubts about Tade as a director, a sporting director. If his heart is even in it, if he's leaving for Inter at the end of the year. The conspiracy theories, I know nobody wants to hear them, but you have to bring these to the front and center of what we're dealing with here, because we are fans of a team here, and people in Italy are looking for just an excuse not to go to the stadium as well.
I think there's a couple of things too about the whole Hernandez deal that needs to be considered, and one of the things you actually touched on straight away when you were talking about it, Michael, was that this idea that we're becoming a feeder club. I mean, even under Cragnotti, with all the money in the world, we sold players to Inter. Christian Vieri, a notable example. It's just, we just do not have, unfortunately, the history to keep a player like Hernandez at the club. But what makes it infuriating, I think, for all of us is that Inter at the moment are not in great shakes themselves.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.
Also, if you think about Hernandez's age, I mean, he's 28 at the minute, if I'm not mistaken. Well,
yeah.
Inter are not on course for the Champions League spot this year, and we're not on course for the Champions League spot. So whether he stayed with us or went to them, the guy's going to be in his 30s before he ever plays Champions League football. So to me, it's like the first offer that came along, he took it. And the big question for me is, when did this offer come in? Rhea's talking as if it only came in the last
3 days or so, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then at the same time, Rhea said today that there was 10, 12 targets that we've been working on since the start of January. Well, why are we looking for a big name in January if Hernandez wasn't going? I mean, January is not the time to buy unless you're desperate, and so
because you're going to be paying double the cost of a player's value.
Pretty much. I mean, this will liken nicely to Postiga, really, but I mean, for me, I feel like Postiga was like the best option we could get for the money we got for Flockery, and it just seems like there was no other striker we could spend that amount of money on. There was nobody that we could snare in, and it just seems like all across Europe this year that teams are being, and particularly in this January transfer window, being really cautious with who they sell. They're not going to sell unless they're getting double, as you say, double. Now, in other years, I've seen some crazy deals, but I mean, and there have been some crazy loan deals, but the loan deals that are coming about is when teams are just desperate to get rid of someone. I just feel like Valencia are desperate to get rid of Postiga. He just hasn't scored the goals for them. They're desperate to get rid of him.
Sorry, Carl. I was just going to jump in the air. He's had an absolute stinker, hasn't he? In like, since he's joined Valencia, I think he's scored 3 goals and nothing since sort of August, September time.
Yeah, and and I just feel with Hernandez, it's like that seems like one of the best deals that was done in the whole, of the January transfer window. And yet Inter paid big money for him, but it seems like the options were just particularly bad, and I just feel like we're the ones that have really been.
So what are you saying, Caxi? Are you saying that we're lying in the sense that there really wasn't 10 targets, or what are you trying to tell me?
I'm not sure if we're lying in the sense, but I think at the start of January we had an inclination that Hernandez wasn't going to be there by the end of it. We
Oh,
must
okay.
have done.
Okay.
I know there was money there. There was a whole Yilmaz saga in the summer, so there was obviously money there to spend on the right guy. But something just doesn't add up. There was Hernandez's statement as well, that he made on Lazio Style Radio, where he made it clear that he was offered a contract after the Napoli game. I mean, that is really, that's midweek. We offer him a 5-year deal. He decides he's going. It
Yeah.
seems like too short a time frame. This must have been in the
Yeah, a
pipeline.
mega deal like this doesn't get done really in 3 days. I see what you're saying here.
No, and also on top of that, if you look into the various media reports, there was all these different reports on the figure, what the price is. There still is.
Yeah, we're
the
still trying to
fact
figure
is-
it out how much money we made off this deal.
No, and then the whole way through that, while the media were speculating on the figure, nobody could locate Latito. So it looked like no meeting, no negotiations were taking place. Yet there was this media sort of sense that there were negotiations were ongoing. I think that deal was done for quite a while. I say the deal might have been done for a couple of weeks, an actual agreement, but we spent a couple of weeks trying to convince Hernandez to stay. That's how I see it. And we knew he was going from his tears, 48 hours almost before it actually became a done deal. I mean, we were hoping he would stay. We really were, as far as I can see, and it's.
Do you say they're crocodile tears then? Is that your final take on that?
I'm not saying it was crocodile tears. I'm saying that he might have. I think he genuinely feels bad to leave this club. I think he genuinely has he does have a genuine affection for us, but I just feel like in his heart he's known he's going for a while, because I feel like there was a deal. Not necessarily he'd agreed to the deal, but the clubs had agreed to the deal, and we were just hoping we would get this big name that we really needed to just be able to say, right, let's do it. And the reason why the transfer was eventually done on the final day, and actually technically in the final hour, was probably because we were still hoping to get that name,
And to try to offset the blow, I guess, to the fans is what you're trying to say. So let's
Yeah,
say, for example, Jovinko comes in, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we've replaced Hernandez, we have Jovinko, and all is not lost then at Lazio.
Yeah, and also with Kakuta, I mean, we had that deal lined up, 4 or 5 hours before the close of the transfer window. Yet instead of just getting that deal done, bringing him in, we started chasing after Biabiani, as if, okay, we've got a deal with Kakuta, but if we get this guy who's better, we're going to forget about that deal. It seems like we were just constantly through the whole transfer window trying to find something to just appease the fans for the loss of Hernandez.
There was a wonderful article written here in Toronto by aforementioned Cathal Mullen, actually, talking about Toronto FC signing Jermaine Defoe. And I don't want to get too off topic, but the tricks of the Mercato were really illustrated, especially on the Italian side, through this article saying about how a deal for Toronto FC with Gilardino supposedly coming in, and then Gilardino having an agent that really wasn't his agent negotiating for him. So I can see where some of this confusion lies in what you're saying, Cathal, in terms of we having a deal in place, but we're searching other options out first. I mean, that's human nature, trying to get the best deal possible. But in the end, we're left with really a flop from Chelsea, and we're left with somebody else who probably potentially has his best years behind him in Helder Postiga. And correct me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. But am I onto something when I say that maybe there is a bit of a conspiracy here with Cathal saying that maybe the deal was in place back in January, from the beginning of January, and maybe this return of Rea was the final straw that broke Hernandez's back, where he says, "I got to get the hell out of here."
I don't really want to buy into the conspiracy theory. I think, but I do. But I must admit, I don't know if I don't think it's to do with Rea himself, but I do think that there was, obviously, come the start of January, I think there must have been talks. There must have been these things don't happen within 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Just on deadline day. There's a lot of planning that does go into these moves, especially when you're talking about the huge investment like this. So I'm sure it was something that has been ongoing. I also think though that if we were 5th or 6th in the league, as opposed to 10th, and we were pushing for one of those big places, I don't think we would have sold. I think that the fact that obviously the Tito can see that the season's not really going anywhere, and the fact that because of that, he's going to cash in and make the most out of the Hernandez money whilst he can. And I think for Hernandez, like this season, I think he realistically he wanted to go in the summer, and probably thought he was going to be going last summer, as opposed to next summer. But no move happened. I don't know if there was any concrete bids or anything for him at that point. But I just get the feeling that his head seemed to be a little bit turned come the start of the season, and it almost like I think I put a note out there yesterday or this morning that it kind of just reminds me back of that 2004 when we saw, like, from nowhere Stankovic once again being shipped off to Inter, and then 6 months later Mancini then obviously joining him.
Let alone Cesar secretly negotiating as well mid season, and then all of a sudden him jumping ship too in January.
Mihailovic
Once
as well,
again to Inter.
Yeah.
Inter always.
Yeah, so no, those so you kind of you have those things in the back of your head that sort of start do bite away at you, and you start asking questions. I don't think it's to do with like Raya, that it was a case that he was moving. I think it was a case that he wanted to move before, it didn't happen, and then when it came out this point, and realistically, if we wanted to show our intent, we should have been offering them a 5-year contract, a couple of months ago, not now, not leaving it to, as you said, 2 days before the end of the window, or at the point where obviously there's a bid that's already come through for him.
Well, case closed. Hernandez is gone, and with all due respect to Eddie Rea, who has his clear targets in place, we bowed out of the Coppa Italia now midweek after we fielded yet a very young roster. Eddie Rea's goals are very simple here, and it's not to progress in cup games. He's been pretty clear on his stance, and this is where I find it confusing with what you said, Scott, where maybe Lotito feels that the season is a wash and we're not going anywhere, therefore we will sell Hernandez, but Eddie Rea continues to stress our finishing placement in the standings of the Campeonato is first and foremost. Everything else is secondary. The two main focal points this year are to build the youth and to finish as high up the standings as possible. Now, maybe I'm reading into something there too much, that maybe we really don't care about where we finish in the standings and we plan to make a real run for it in the Europa League. But to me, Rea's words are only the most honest words I can take at this point. If Rea says we negotiated at some point with 10 players, I got to take that as fact, because there's no lying in Rea. Rea doesn't really abide by what Lotito says, and he doesn't abide by what the fans say. He walks to the beat of his own drum, right, Caxi?
Yeah, I believe so. And actually, in his second comment of sorts, I think he's got more honest. To be honest with you, I think he's actually just telling it like it is now, because I still have an inclination he's going to be here for more than just the next 4 or 5 months. But in his mind, he's very much treating it as if he's gone in June. And I think probably our goal is to finish as high up the league as possible.
So why do we sell Hernandez then? What's the point?
Well, I think honestly, there's a lot of talk. The main kind of argument really against Lotito and everything Lazio at the minute is really that we just haven't gone out and replaced him. But I don't think we have to replace Hernandez. He's such an enigma anyway. We're just not going to find another player like him. I think statistically in the last 2 seasons, he scored more goals from outside the box than any other player. So in Serie A, we're not going to find anyone from within the league who can offer that, and that's his main strength. His specialty is getting on the ball and making something happen from long range, and I don't think we can replace that. I don't think we should replace that. We've got Stefano Mauri coming back as of Monday. We've got Keita, who really just needs a bit of faith shown in him. Rea's sort of gone with this 3-4-2-1 system at the moment. I don't think that exactly played to Hernandez's strengths anyway. Okay, he was looking a better player in the system, but I think Rea would ideally have liked him flanked by Candreva +1, maybe Keita, maybe Mauri, and sort of use them to create the space for Hernandez. So I think Rea might be looking at this now and thinking, okay, we don't need a replacement. We've got enough options here to sort of, okay, we don't have the same quality, we don't have the same match winning ability, but I still think he'll be pretty confident that we can overhaul Parma, Torino, Milan. I think very possible to overhaul. And then there's Verona as well, who are slipping down the table very quickly. I don't think coming in the top six is completely out of the question. And Rhea being just stubborn and egotistical enough to, just having the required amount for a manager, I think he'll firmly believe that he can still get this batch of players into the top six. If he does, I'll be thoroughly impressed, but I'd imagine he thinks he does.
Well,
for the remaining, I must admit, as we look at the remaining fixtures, that the fixtures themselves are are relatively kind. Okay, we when we look at a derby, obviously the form goes out, as we know, the old cliche kicks in, and it just depends on obviously what happens during the week and the passion and how on that day can everyone be lifted. And especially with obviously being Rea's first derby back, but then after that, things like Catania, Sassuolo, Fiorentina away is a bit tricky, but then it's back to Atalanta, Cagliari. They're nice fixtures that there's no reason we can't push up the table, but it's still, I think, you kind of have that little bit of an empty feeling at the moment. Unfortunately, maybe say in 24 hours' time we beat Chievo, and then suddenly that's that initial lift. And to be fair, going on what we've got so far since Rea's return, looking at the Serie A form, it should be positive. But I think it's just the fact that we kind of maybe feel a little bit down because of obviously the dealings.
Scott, you've touched on the feelings, and somebody said on Lazio Forever Forum, it's like your girlfriend breaking up with you and you didn't even see it coming. This Hernandez transfer, and like I said, I didn't see it coming. If you had told me at the beginning of the Mercato, I would have told you there was a better chance of Marchetti leaving than Hernandez. And no matter what way you slice it, Hernandez is gone. We still don't know the figures, and I just want to bid him good luck, because he was a real classy guy, and I don't want that to be confused in any of this. And whoever was at fault here, or whoever wanted the move to go through, or whoever forced whose hand, I don't care at this point. I just want to wish him a farewell, and I'm going to miss that guy, and I'm going to miss his goals. And out of respect to the rest of Mercato, I think we should at least address 5 minutes on some players. And Scott, somebody who has been labeled a Chelsea flop, and Kakuta, what can you tell us about the gentleman coming in?
It's weird. I must admit, I thought he was a little bit older by now, but I see he's still only 22. Which is obviously a big positive. The big concerns though are obviously his lack of games. I was looking, obviously at Chelsea he's not really featured at all. He had that initial when he first arrived. He obviously immediately got banned because of Chelsea's transfer dealings with Len and to do with obviously breaking his contract. But he went out to Fulham for half a season, but only played a handful of games. Then the same thing happened at Bolton. He didn't really play. Again, I think he got about four or five matches in a 6-month spell. Then he returned to France though with Dijon, and he actually finally got a few first team matches under his belt where he played about 12 games. Again, more so as a winger attacking midfielder. But then sort of as again, it was very hard to see any of his actual development at that point. And then he went off to Holland, to the Netherlands, and he was with Vitesse, who he went out for them for 2012-2013 season, played 21 times, scored once, and he helped them to finish fourth. They obviously were impressed, and then brought him back this season. Which all looked very positive, and I thought, okay, that's quite interesting when I was looking through some info. But unfortunately, this season, since he's gone back to there, he hasn't started a single game. He's come off the bench 12 times and scored once. But so you kind of think, you expect that he was going to be playing this season. But again, the fact that he hasn't he hasn't had a single first team start, it does leave me wondering. I can't imagine he's going to be in the starting lineup tomorrow or anytime soon. It's going to probably take him a couple of matches at least to start to figure. But when he signed, there was huge expectations, and I know like the people that were playing alongside him in the reserves and in training had really big things to say about him. But like so many youngsters that go into Chelsea, they never actually fully get that chance, do they? Because Chelsea tend to obviously they bring so many more, and you see it with their Lukaku and the guys over in Atletico as well. These are incredible players. They send them back out on loan,
or they'll buy them back, like a la Matic from Benfica.
Exactly. Yeah. crazy money. So it's not real. I don't hold it against him that he hasn't played there, but the fact my concern is that he's then gone on loan to 4 different clubs and he hasn't really played that much. He's still only got, say, 40 in basically 4 seasons. He's still only got like about 40 starts under his belt. That would be my worry.
So he's become a journeyman winger in about 4 years' time at the age of 22, let's say.
Precisely.
And ironically, Reyes says at the beginning of the transfer window, I want a player that is already in Serie A that I don't need to have to train to adapt to Serie A. And of course, ironically, the 2 players that we do bring in this Mercato are neither from Serie A and both journeyman people. And this is a second segue now into Postiga. And you can touch on Kakuta too if you want, Cathal, but the floor is yours to talk on the both transfers coming.
Yeah, I think Scott really covered the Kakuta saga well there. I mean, the only thing I would add to that is Vitesse are very much title challengers in the Eredivisie this year, and Kakuta was out injured for a good few of the first games, so I think he's come off the bench something like 12 times. I mean, before the Chelsea brought him back, before Chelsea cancelled the loan deal, Kakuta seemed to be coming off the bench every game. It's almost, to me, without having seen Vitesse in action, it's like they were trying to find a way to integrate him back into the first team after his injury, but obviously you don't change a side that's challenging for the title and really shouldn't be. So I think maybe this guy is a bit more polished than he seems, but at the same time I can't see him walking into our starting lineup. And it's a complete gamble. But
surprise, another gamble.
Well, it's another gamble, but I mean, I'd rather gamble than spend that 4.5 million price on half of Biabiani. I mean, I would rather we gamble now if it doesn't pay off, invest in the summer. I don't see the problem in that. I think, as I said, I think Rea can find a way to somehow get this team playing at least as well as they have been in this poor season. So I don't mind gambling on him. I was reading around, scouts and various coaches in Chelsea felt that if this guy was sent back to France, he could explode. And we have quite a significant French or French-speaking contingent. And as I understand it, Kakuta chose also a Villarreal. And at this moment in time, I don't know if many neutrals would. So I'm hoping that
apparently 10 people don't want to join us, so we'll take anything we can get at this point.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a consolation, but I mean, there's almost a sense of ecstasy with it. But I mean, I just think that this guy the conditions might be right for him to explode. But I still think more than likely he's going to flop, and we're sending him back after 6 months. As for Postiga, my disappointment on it is I think it was the right time for Flockery to go. He's 6 months to run. Sassuolo were offering somewhere between 1.8 and 2.2 million. Not really confirmed, but that's the figure that's being talked about. For a guy like Flockery who hadn't scored in Serie A all year, that's just great value. In saying that, Flockery has been scoring in Europa League, and in a Lazio jersey, he can, if he's playing regular enough, hit 8, 10, 12 goals a season. I severely doubt Postiga can manage that in Serie A. I know he's 31, he's experienced. He's had seasons where he's hit double figures. He's also had seasons where he's played 30 games and hit a couple of goals max. He's a bit hit and miss, or more mediocre miss, I would say. I honestly think if it wasn't for the financials involved, I'd rather have Flockery, and I think Flockery would do the better job. But again, this goes back to the point I made much earlier. We kind of had to sell Flockery given he's only got 6 months left and he wants regular playing time. Who can you spend 1-2 million on that is going to be an improvement on what we had? It's a bit of a gamble. It's a new league for him, but the guy is an international player. He's got certain attributes that Ray will like, that Lotito likes, and who knows? If he gets it at 3 or 4, it's fine. The main thing for me is I don't want to see him pushing Bray and Perea out of the team. I sort of think Perea is almost on a par with Klose at the best of times these days anyway. He's certainly not the real deal or the finished article yet, but he's got a bit of everything to his game. I'd rather we gave him some playing time,
And
and I
of course
just
he
hope
has,
that he's
yeah,
still ahead of Postiga in the pecking order.
and of course he has time on his side. But the thing about Postiga is that, and you touched on it, is international experience. He's a regular fixture in the Portuguese national team. He's a guy who's played in every major league, minus the German Bundesliga at this point. He's a guy who can hit the back of the net. He's no stranger to scoring goals, and he's played for top clubs all around. And of course, he's also labeled with the flop tag from Tottenham, and those flop tags will follow you wherever you go. But my stance on this is, before the Hernandez deal had concluded, and we were left with this Postiga thing to speak of. You said yes, he is hit or miss, but he is definitely a guy that will work hard on the pitch. And I've had the pleasure of watching him play for 2 years at Sporting. I followed him quite closely, and he resembles to me, the way he scores goals, a Quagliarella style, where he's not going to score a lot of goals, but when he does score, sometimes they can be so fantastic from as far as half field. Sometimes he'll blast one in there. I've seen him score in the Europa League against medalists from quite some distance. But then again, he'll have stinkers, as Scott will say. So yeah, it is a gamble, and shocker, it's another gamble by Lotito and company. But what I don't appreciate is people across forums and the keyboard lines that continue to slag this gentleman before he's even touched soil, Italian soil. And you show a little respect to a guy who's going to play in the World Cup, and he's probably going to start every game in the World Cup, flanked by world-class players in Ronaldo and Nani, and people writing him off before he's even put on a jersey, I think is disgraceful. And that's a theme that I'm going to touch on towards the end of this. But to want somebody to fail, or to think that somebody is shit, for example, for lack of a better word, that's your opinion. That's fine. If you think he's going to flop, if you think Floketi's better, that's your opinion. But for some people, and I'm not saying it's you, Caxi, but there's a lot of people out there that are kind of hoping he'll fail, just to say, I told you so. And now, where's the satisfaction in that? And that I just can't accept.
Yeah, I don't get it either, and there are no certainties in this game anyway. So I mean, we sold Hernandez. We've spoken, and we can speak about it until we're just even more disgusted. But a simple tweak in system, and Postiga might start firing them in for us from long range, from close range. I don't know, but he could end up being a superstar, even if it is just for 6 months. You just don't know, and you have to put faith in these guys. Both Kakuta and Postiga, their careers so far, okay, one's far further along than the other, but they're two players that, when they've got a bit of confidence behind them, they can offer something. And and I was thinking this, I don't think I actually said it anywhere, but in some ways I feel like Kakuta has already got it tough, because automatically people are going to expect him to be able to replace Hernandez. And it's completely unreasonable, because he's 6-7 years younger. He hasn't got the experience. He probably has a talent, but he hasn't really shown that he can do anything with it yet. But I mean, people are still going to expect it, because he is the like for like, and people are going to expect Postiga to be better than Flockery, be better than Perea, even compete with Klose, and that would be great. But I mean,
yeah, we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic about this. We know what he's capable of. We know that Kakuta somewhere is like a lump of coal that could turn into a diamond. But if they're placed in the right settings, and right now this club doesn't seem like it is the right environment for, let's say, a Kakuta to develop. Yeah, we have a great coach in the sense that he can offer a lot of expertise and experience and build the club playing again for the shirt, but to be honest with you, when you have people protesting outside just because Inter did it when Guarin and Vucinic collapsed, they thought, okay, we're going to put 300 strong outside Formello and say, we're not having any of it. Resto con noi, Hernandez, and whatever it is they want to shout, and you know what? It's just they're just going to listen to us. And these are the same people that don't go to the stadium on the weekends, but they have time to take out of their schedule to protest outside. I'm just as ashamed at them as I am at people who don't come out to support the club.
And you know what?
You go. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll hand over to you, Scott. I'll just say quickly, those fans, they acted before they knew the full facts, and in this case with Kakuta and Postiga, we're also setting a bar for them before we know what they can do in our shirt. We're judging them on what we can see on Wikipedia or in any football site, And that we set that bar, and that's it. And if they don't make it, then stuff them. And we can't be doing that. But unfortunately, that is the culture. And when you've created that culture, it's almost impossible for a guy like Kakuta to fulfill his talent. And it's difficult for a guy like Postiga, even if he is experienced and has been around the block. It's difficult for him even to get into the environment. So Scott, maybe you can.
Yeah, last word to you, Scott.
Yeah, I'm looking at Postiga. Because I must admit, I wasn't aware until say we came on air that he was still obviously still so largely involved in the Portuguese squad, and the fact even in those playoffs he was there and he was playing. Okay, I know Portugal haven't got a huge amount of forwards available, but at the end of the day they've definitely the fact that they still that he's getting in a side alongside Cristiano Ronaldo must tell you that there's definitely something about him, that he's going to be able to offer something on some level to us.
He's going to score goals, and the Portuguese community is kind of actually upset. If you read some of the articles today against Record and Abola, some of these websites, they're almost offended because first of all, it was told to me before we signed Postiga that they found it a little bit strange. A, because he's cup tied. He's already played for Valencia in the Europa League. And this is the shady part of business where I'm left scratching my head with another Lotito dealings where the type of guy he'll come out and yell and say, you know what, Hernandez's shoe is only worth 17 million. Yet alone, we probably sell Hernandez for probably less than 17 million. And then on the other hand, we're going to get a striker that knows Serie A, and we've got Helder Postiga. No disrespect to him, but I think that's what the paper is trying to come out with. Once Reyes says we had 10 guys lined up to try to sign and everybody rejected us, the Portuguese magazine says, why does our boy Helder have to join this monstrosity of a disorganized poor excuse for a club is basically what the article emphasized when they talked about it. They said, we were all excited to see Postiga because even on the Portuguese side, they don't really know per se where Lazio stands now. Lazio is a historic club, and that's the overall theme I want to give here. We might be a feeder club, but we have history. We're the first team of Rome, and we are still somebody's, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions. So I think the Portuguese community is right to be upset that we've kind of just dusted him off, and this is, to them, this is their best striker. This is who they have. They have him, they have Hugo Almeida, and to a lesser extent, they have another young up-and-coming guy named Nelson Oliveira. I know the Portuguese football well, and for some reason they just can't breed strikers like they can wingers. But this is still their bread and butter. And Scott, take it away before I lose my train of thought and go into North America.
What I was also going to say though, that Kyle reminded me as well, the fact that we do welcome back Mauri, obviously on Monday, and that as well is almost like an extra, because it's kind of been forgotten because of the fact, that over the last few days. But that now feels like, once we see him back on the pitch, that'll also feel like a new signing. The fact that, we haven't had him for 6 months or 9 months or what have you, and he's now here and he's back. So at least that provides a little bit, that some more width. And possibly between him, Kakuta, what I could also see is Candreva maybe moving a bit more central as well, tactically, and they could see that as possible, a different option to that, filling that sort of Hernandez void as well. Because we know Candreva doesn't mind having a pop from outside the box either, to be fair.
That's right. And
sorry, Michael, just interrupt. There's opportunity there for Keita. I haven't been a big fan of him. I think he's a bit one-dimensional. He reminds me of Zarate. Reminds me also of El Shaarawy a bit, in the sense that I feel like he's a bit of a one-trick pony whose trick's very good. But the guy could explode a la Zarate or El Shaarawy. And, even if Murray doesn't have the impact we think, or Kakuta, that guy might. Felipe Anderson might. So, we don't need one of them to even half succeed to kind of carry us. But just one other thing, we're probably dragging on a bit now, but is it not curious that Postiga has come from playing first-team football in Valencia to play second fiddle to Closer?
It's one of those conspiracy theories that we could probably discuss again. It is very interesting. You did mention, too, that Valencia is in some financial instability, and they look like they were going to offload Banega, too. I'm not sure exactly where their Mercato finished because we've been so immersed with the Lazio Mercato, but perhaps you know something I don't, Cathal.
I think they brought in Eddie Vargas, didn't they?
From Napoli, yeah.
earlier. So I mean, and he's just someone who's been branded a bit of a flop. So it's almost like they took a risk on someone with potential, like sort of we are with Kakuta, and offloaded Postiga. Very, very curious decision, especially considering where he didn't actually pay anything for Postiga, as far as I'm aware. It's just some curious deals in this window, and that's one of them. And then when you see Postiga turning up with a calf injury,
Yeah,
kind
which
of
he
makes
had,
me
which he had already, and that's what was mentioned to me. It goes, it's strange that you guys got Postiga because he's the type of guy who actually, ironically, is never injured. He's the type of guy who can play 37 out of 38 games, and then of course, this 1 year he's been plagued by injuries from September till now.
Yeah, and we've been unlucky with that. Look at Diego Navarrete. I mean, he was someone who's meant to play 35 odd games. He's barely been fit. We've just been unlucky in that sense. But I just think the whole Hernandez saga, and even the bizarre nature of the Kakuta deal that came out of nowhere, and he sort of got all the talent in the world but isn't delivering, I think that's overshadowing the absolute curious nature of the Postiga deal, which is, I think, could actually be the most interesting thing, because maybe it is in Reyes' mind to switch to two strikers. Maybe that's the way he's going to deal with the loss of Hernandez. Maybe that's why Postiga is here. He mentioned that we went after Matri first, and then when we didn't get Matri, we chased other people. Maybe Postiga was the best we can do, but maybe there's something we're missing. It just seems very curious at this moment in time.
Curiosity definitely killed the cat, and I want to take this opportunity to walk people off the ledge if they're thinking about jumping with the precarious situation that Lazio has left us, and there's no reason to lose hope, and there's a lot to be still hopeful for. And Scott, if you want to add anything, I know you want to jump in there before I switch our attention over to North America on this side of the pond.
I'm not just going to say that, because I must admit, I think the last, not for the Napoli game, but the one before, when we were playing against Juventus again, I think it was all the game before. We started with two up front on that day, so maybe that is the case that Ray is looking to maybe optimize that a little bit more, trying to start with two up front. So it could be, as you say, that could be why he sees Closer and Postiga obviously playing, possibly playing alongside each other.
Not to mention with Klose, it's a matter of when, not if, he's going to get injured. So we can always revert back to that too, with Postiga taking his role, and of course Perea is always ready to step in. And I thank you guys for joining us. And excuse me as I dive off into a part of North America, and you guys can jump in too if you have anything you want to add at the end. Lazio in North America, in particular, right now here in the Toronto area, we had a nice write up from our Pasta Bolognese dinner with Lazio Club Canada. Written by Lo Specchio bi-weekly magazine. Now, what wasn't mentioned in that, they had a lovely picture of us with our Lazio Club Canada banner. What wasn't mentioned in that was actually how many people showed up to the event. And sadly, I'm embarrassed to say it was 8 people. 8 people. Okay, Bologna-Lazio isn't the sexiest matchup, but then shockingly, half of those people returned for Lazio-Juventus a fortnight later. And yet, year after year, here we are on the forums. Lazio Forever, too, is another forum that's lit up with public displays of displeasure with this Mercato and signings and where the club is going. I see people across social media claiming to be the biggest Lazio fans, even in Canada, yet when Lazio plays Roma in the Coppa Italia final, probably the biggest match in our history, this individual finds himself in Pittsburgh watching an NHL hockey game. And I have friends making 6-hour drives to be among the pocket of maybe 10 to 15 regulars of Lazio Club Canada north of Toronto, and people who live within 15 minutes of our headquarters can't even be bothered to watch the game with us, and using every excuse under the sun not to be among other Lazio fans. We're not talking about other Serie A fans, other haters. We're talking about Lazio fans who love the club just as much as you. And just this week, I posted a picture of myself and Hernandez from 2011, which I alluded to earlier in the show when we met in Fuji. And someone had the nerve to come out and tell me on Facebook that they envy me. They envy me. It's confusing me, and it just gets me angry, because all we ask, and this is where Scott and Kath will come into this as well, be a part of it. Be a part of Lazio. Be a part of Lazio Club Canada. Be a part of Lazio Indonesia. Be a part of it, for God's sakes. Kath, myself, Paolo Peroso, Nigel in Singapore, all the crazy fans in Indonesia. We work 24 hours a day for La Lazio Cazzo, and I'm summoning Malazani there, but it comes from the heart, and we don't get paid to do this. We don't get paid to do this show. We don't get paid to do any of it. We don't get paid paid to talk about it. We do it because we love it. And sadly, here, I'll continue to try to round up people through emails and try to get them out to our headquarters. And I repeat, we have our own place, a headquarters for Lazio fans only to enjoy the game together. Coffee, food, alcohol. We have it, and I'm left scratching my head because next Sunday we have the Derby, and people should come up to show support for their team. And it's a vergogna, a real shame, a disgrace, guys, for those of you listening in North America. And this summer, as another example, I got phone calls, emails asking how to get tickets for the potential Super Cup in Toronto that was supposed to happen with Lazio Juventus from people who have never come out one time to watch with Lazio Club Canada. Part-time fans, shame on you, I call you. The people that don't use the motto, do what you can for La Lazio, not what La Lazio can do for you, as Paolo coined. And the teams aren't signing, aren't signing world-class players, as we talked about. We aren't challenging every year for the Scudetto. Get over it or get the fuck out, I have to say. Trophies and silverware aren't going to come on the regular with this club. You can change the channel. Real and Barcelona are a click away. But do me a favor, stay off the forums if you're just going to spread the hate from now until the end of the season. And just like the Tifosi in Rome, too, who spent 6 hours outside Formello instead of going to work and protesting that they don't come to the stadium because of these reasons of selling Hernandez. Shame on you. Vergogna su di voi anche. Me, Caxi, Scott, we'll all still be here. Bitter or not, these are my favorite moments, and I'm going to tell you why. These moments are what make fans who they are, the real fans, and that's what's special about supporting a club like Lazio, the first team of Rome. And when special moments happen like May 26th, those are the moments that live on forever and dictate what it's like to support a real football club, a one with real history. Players come and go, but it's us fans who make what Lazio is. And solo Lazio sempre. Guys, thank you for joining me.
All right, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Saluti a tutti i tifosi al Canada. Ciao Canada.